One of the best point guards of the 2000s, Chauncey Billups was one of the most underrated and underappreciated players of his era. Always delivered late in close games, that's how he earned the name Mr. Big Shot. How's it going, guys? My name's Wilson. The 42-year-old future NBA Hall of Famer played his final games as a member of the Detroit Pistons, retired after the 2013-14 season. Now seen as an analyst with ESPN on NBA Countdown, the former 5-time All-Star was one of the most unselfish players in NBA history. Most teenagers today didn't have the chance to watch him play in his Denver and Detroit days. Even though Mr. Billups was not one of the flashiest players to watch, was always one of the most valuable players on his team, very consistent and made all the right plays. Drafted as the 3rd overall pick in the '97 NBA draft, the Denver native is the greatest basketball player to have ever come out of the state of Colorado. Had his number 4 jersey number retired after 2 successful seasons at the University of Colorado, led the Buffaloes to the NCAA tournament in '97, ending a programmed 28-year drought. Was selected by the Boston Celtics, only drafted behind Tim Duncan and Keith Van Horn. His NBA career, however, did not go well at first. Just 51 games into his rookie season, head coach Rick Pitino did not give Billups much of a chance, was very impatient with his rookie, trading him to Toronto for Kenny Anderson. Pitino needed a veteran point guard to try to make the playoffs. Billups could have been teammates with Paul Pierce for many years. Instead, they became rivals when Boston would face Detroit in the playoffs during the 2000s. Young Chauncey was known as a journeyman, being bounced left and right. Billups only played 29 games with the Raptors, being traded to his hometown Nuggets in January of '99. Despite averaging almost 14 points in his second season, the 23-year-old Billups was traded once again, this time to the Orlando Magic in 2000, was sidelined due to a shoulder injury, never even played a game for them. Was then signed by the Timberwolves as a backup point guard to Terrell Brandon. Amongst NBA circles at the time, Billups was considered a draft bust. Looking to prove doubters wrong, Chauncey tirelessly worked on his game, was always ready to seize the moment. The 6'3" point guard credited his success to former Wolves teammates Sam Mitchell and Brandon, who taught young Chauncey what it takes to succeed as a professional, how to manage the game at the point, and to study film. When Brandon suffered a serious knee injury, Billups started making a name for himself, had a breakthrough season with the Wolves winning 50 games in 2002 before being swept by Dallas in the first round of the playoffs, where Billups averaged 22 that series. Became a free agent that summer. Because Minnesota has salary cap issues, he signed with the Pistons instead to become the team's new starting point guard. Completely changed the dynamic of the team, quickly earned his respect by teammates and fans. The name Mr. Big Shot started when he made a game-winning 3 in March of '03 to beat the Warriors, scoring 31 points. Just over 2 weeks later, Billups drained another game-winning 3 in OT against the Hawks with less than a second left, led the Pistons to the number 1 seed in the East, winning 50 regular season games, with his team against the brink of elimination, falling behind 3-1 to the 8-seeded Magic led by Tracy McGrady in the first round. Billups dropped 40 in Game 6 and dominated Game 7, scoring 37 in a come-from-behind series win. That was only the start of the greatness of Chauncey Billups. Went on to knock off Allen Iverson's Sixers in 6 before being swept by Jason Kidd's Nets in the conference finals. Head coach Rick Carlisle was fired after, before Larry Brown was hired. Due to the loaded point guards of the 2000s, like Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, even Steve Francis, and Stephon Marbury at the early part of the decade were the most popular point guards. Billups' name was often forgotten in the conversation. As a vital part of that Detroit team, what Ben Wallace meant to defense was what Billups meant to offense. The quiet, deadly assassin always takes good shots playing the right way, would always find Rip Hamilton cutting and draining the mid-range jumper, was strong enough to draw fouls, shot over 89.5% from the free throw line for his career. Because he didn't have much highlight plays, he was overshadowed by the other players, led his Pistons to a 54-28 record, only 3rd in the conference. After experiencing how bad Darko Milicic was, the team acquired Rasheed Wallace mid-season from the Hawks, not the Blazers. Wallace only played 1 game with Atlanta, was the difference maker for those Pistons. One of Billups' most epic playoff moments came in the semi-final series against the Nets, banking in the incredible half-court shot as time expired in regulation of Game 5, sending the game to overtime, but his team eventually lost in triple OT. Bounced back, had a game-high 22 points in a 90-69 Game 7 win, grinded down an intense defensive conference finals against the Pacers, where his team averaged 75.2 points for the series to the Pacers' 72.7 points. Neither team scored more than 85 points in any game that series. Old school basketball at its finest. Had one of the most improbable, unlikely runs in NBA history, with the Lakers as the heavy favorite. Many thought LA would sweep Detroit with 4 future Hall of Famers, but instead, the Pistons almost swept the Lakers. If it wasn't for Kobe's game-tying 3 in Game 2, Detroit didn't even have a max player on the team, but everyone was on the same page. Billups was always the one to keep his teammates engaged. The 27-year-old was way too quick for the 35-year-old Gary Payton. Averaged 21 points, 5.2 assists, shot 51% from the floor, 47% from 3, 93% from the line in an easy 5-game series win, becoming the first non-All-Star to win Finals MVP since Joe Dumars in 1989. It wasn't just his performance on the court, but his presence in the locker room and qualities connecting with his team. Billups was one of the top defensive point guards. Aside from his incredible shooting, was named second team All-Defense in 05 and 06, a rare two-way player and a master at the pull-up 3 in transition, where he would have the green light to shoot those all day in today's game. Once again led his Pistons to 54 wins in 04-05, averaged 16.5 points that season, put up almost 19.7 assists in a 5-game first-round series win over the Sixers. Had very similar numbers in the second round, knocking off the Pacers in 6. Closed out a tough 7-game series against Miami, knocking down clutch free throws before falling to San Antonio in 7. Once again, Billups proved to be the best player on his team that series in the finals. Averaged nearly 20.5 points, 5 rebounds, over 6 assists. Despite dropping a game-high 34 points in Game 5, Billups revealed on the Zach Lowe podcast he believed Coach Larry Brown choked away Game 5. The play when Robert Horry nailed the clutch 3, he thought backup point guard Lindsey Hunter was checking in for Rasheed Wallace. In the huddle, everybody says no threes. Lindsey says to Chauncey, "I got you," catching Billups off guard, having no idea why Brown didn't play him in the game on the crucial possession. That was very strange, believing if he stayed in the game, they would have won Game 5. Unfortunately for Chauncey, that moment did cost his team the series and his opportunity in winning back-to-back Finals MVP. Finally earned the recognition he deserved, becoming a first-time All-Star in 05-06. Played alongside Hamilton and the 2 Wallaces, being on the floor at the same time, leading the East to a comeback win. Averaged 18.5 points, a career-best 8.6 assists on a 64-win Pistons team, finished 5th for MVP voting, was the best player on the best regular season team, lost to Miami in the conference finals in 6 games. The team was never the same without Ben Wallace, leaving afterwards in free agency. Billups injured his hamstring in Game 3 in the semis of the 08 playoffs against the Magic. Not being 100% in the conference finals, Detroit lost to Boston in 6. Billups truly felt if he was healthy, his team would have not only beaten Boston, but the Lakers as well in the 08 finals. Just a couple games into the 08-09 season, Joe Dumars traded Billups and Antonio McDyess to the Nuggets in exchange for Allen Iverson. After losing in the conference finals for 3 straight years, the team needed to make a change. Denver instantly became contenders, while the Pistons still haven't won a single playoff game in over 10 years. Was the perfect teammate pairing him with Melo, as the leader Anthony desperately needed. Chauncey also finished 6th in MVP voting in 2009. The 32-year-old point guard transformed one of the worst defensive teams into one of the most physical teams. He didn't need to score 25 every night, but his leadership was impeccable. Before his arrival, Melo was knocked out the first round 5 straight times. Chauncey also destroyed Chris Paul in the first round, putting up better numbers, including a 58-point Game 4 blowout, made it look very effortless. Without Billups that series, Melo would have been knocked out again in the first round. Destroyed 35-year-old Jason Kidd in the semis, averaged 21.6 points, 7.2 assists in a 5-game series win, only to lose to Kobe's Lakers in the conference finals in a competitive 6-game series. Denver would have likely beaten the Magic if they got into the finals. That just goes to show Billups' incredible impact, most importantly, making everybody around him better. The following season, averaged a career-best 19.5 points at age 33, lost to Utah in the first round. Afterwards, Chauncey was at the tail end of his career, was traded to New York alongside Melo, was picked up by the Clippers the season after, tore his Achilles, was hampered by injuries, finally retired in 2014 at age 37. After an incredible 17-year career, Chauncey Billups will always be remembered as a winner. Helped transform those Pistons and Nuggets teams in the 2000s, a champion who wasn't the most talented or exciting player to watch, but always knew how to put his team in the best position to win. His legacy is forever cherished in the Motor City when the Pistons retired his #1 jersey number in 2016. Billups totally deserves to be in the Hall of Fame and should get in either next year or at least sometime during the early part of the 2020s decade. His quality and attitude carries much more than his career averages of 15.2 points, 5.4 assists. The greatness of the 2000s Pistons would not have existed without him. Carmelo Anthony would have never gotten out of the first round in Denver without Billups. In my opinion, Billups was the third best point guard in the 2000s decade behind Kidd and Nash. Although he wasn't a superstar, Mr. Big Shot might have never been a top 10 player at any point of his career, but without a doubt, a top 5 leader who had excellent chemistry with his teammates. If 28-year-old Chauncey Billups was playing in today's game, he would be in the top 5 point guard discussion, a better version of Mike Conley. Although he's not as talented as John Wall, Billups is a way better presence in the locker room. Any good roster who needs a good point guard would prefer prime Billups over Wall. No question about that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I talk NBA comparisons, amazing storylines, NBA history, and anything basketball that will interest you. If you love the NBA, subscribe to my channel. More great stuff coming soon. See you next time.